I think generative AI is like fuel on the fire. It's an accelerant. It's making everybody more productive. The most common thing I hear is it's not the right time.
Yeah.
And I always come back and say it's always the right time because you can't plan these things. You just have to like start going.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, great. What about you?
Good, good.
Thank you for joining us, Raj. This is Rohil Ejaz from AllAboutAI.com, and you are with me in our exclusive interview series. Today, we'll discuss your journey, challenges, accomplishments as the product owner of Solo.
Um, so, uh, so solo AI website creator
Yeah.
started. The original, I never knew I was actually going to work on this problem, but the original sort of idea
Mhm.
or problem was during COVID.
Mhm.
Schools were shut down where I live here in the Bay Area, and I had a 6-year-old son.
Mhm.
So I taught him how to play chess, just things to keep him occupied. And I was like, I'm sure there's other kids I can teach in the neighborhood that are stuck at home. So I
Mhm.
went to go set up a website
Okay.
just to teach kids for free. Went to
Mhm.
Wix, went to Squarespace, went to WordPress, and spent maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, not sure exactly. I don't remember, but
Mhm.
just never finished. Got stuck with like curating the content, finding the images. I'm not, although I like to do user experience design when it comes to like higher fidelity visual design and colors, it's like not my thing. Lots of
Mhm.
options, lots of choices. And so fast forward, when I joined Mozilla, there was an opportunity to build something new, and
Mhm.
generative AI and that sort of intersection just seemed like a great opportunity to start solo. It's been great. I mean, Mozilla obviously makers of Firefox,
Mhm.
great browser.
Mhm. Yeah.
They kind of formative internet Netscape era, been around forever. In some
Mhm.
ways, I feel like very true to the mission about democratizing the internet, but also keeping bigger tech in check, and by playing sort of that neutral third party kind of role. So I think they've done a fantastic job, just more broadly pushing their mission forward. Yeah, so I go through a whole series of, steps and processes anytime I want to evaluate something I want to build. So most of my career has been mostly my own startups.
Mhm.
So certainly when I was looking at this problem statement, I went and looked at the space. And it's not obvious because Wix and Squarespace and WordPress, whatnot, they're massive companies.
Yeah.
And they capture so much of the internet. But interestingly, just a little bit more than a decade ago, Shopify kind of came out of nowhere and said, "Hey, we're going to take a sliver of their business and just focus on e-commerce." And at the time, I believe, and it's all anecdotal information, there's a lot of skepticism. Like, why would I go use Shopify when I could just use Wix? And obviously, they proved a lot of the skeptics wrong and now have created a massive business there. So when we were looking at Solo, we felt that there was another insertion point, and that insertion point was service providers. Service providers are people who charge things by the hour. So it could be consultants, it could be coaches, it could be dog walkers, it could be therapists, whatever it is. Anybody who bills sort of by the hour, people who provide services. And we felt that this sliver is small but rapidly growing. Some people call it the side hustle, some people call it the freelancer.
Mhm.
Interestingly, at least in the US, it's the fastest growing business in the country. Uh, Everybody wants to be their own boss, ownership economy, whatever you want to call it. So we felt that this is a gap we can exploit. We can build an experience that's very good for service providers.
Mhm.
And just like Shopify's sort of curve, we could follow the same path over time. Yeah, so I feel a lot of these side hustlers, freelancers, consultants, whatnot, they're operating on their own.
Okay.
And they've got to focus on their business. Like there's like a bunch of other things they need to worry about, like getting more business, getting customers, servicing those customers. The website is not necessarily top of mind, but it is sort of their business card. It's like where people land, understand what they do.
Mhm.
It's a page they can control. Social
Mhm.
media, it's a little bit harder with that.
Mhm.
So we felt it was a great beachhead, to start there with the website. But yeah, ultimately with the name, it's just a play on the solopreneur,
Mhm.
which the which is this sort of large bucket. And so we just said, why not just call it Solo? Yeah, so certainly since we launched, and even maybe around that time,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a number of AI website creators, generators, builders, whatever you want to call it. Um, there's a couple things we do to try to differentiate against others in the space. So one, it's a very simple experience. It's by design. We're not trying to, be the fully loaded vehicle. We're trying to be like something simple and easy that you can use. If you want to add all the bells and whistles, go use Wix, go use Squarespace. That's probably a better channel. But for the vast majority of people, simple, make the design decisions for you. It's actually quite effective, and it gets them to the finish line because so many people just get stuck in building their site and then they lose interest and they never ultimately launch their business. But we want you to launch your business.
Yes.
Two, we are focused on service providers. Although we see people use Solo in many different ways, we've
Mm-hmm.
remained true to sort of focusing on service providers in that segment. We look at features from that lens. A lot of AI website creators are trying to be generic, or they're trying to output into some kind of source code that a developer can then take and further, so that's sort of a just sort of a focus area in terms of difference. I think the third thing, which I would not discount and possibly disruptive, is we are also free. Um, so I believe we are the only place on the internet, or at least of all AI website creators, where you can actually connect and host your custom domain for free. And it's a big deal because a
Sure.
lot of the business models around website hosting and whatnot is if you connect your custom domain, you have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized pretty early on that SSL certificates are now free. Those used to be paid like 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Hosting is super cheap now because WebP format is just so compressed.
Mm-hmm.
And these are single page sites and they don't tend to get a lot of traffic. Most of these small businesses don't really get more than 50, 100 visitors a month max.
Sure.
And so with so little traffic, there's just so little bandwidth. And we're like, you want to focus on your business. You shouldn't have to pay 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 a month to simply host your website. The sad part about all of this, and I think what makes Solo great, is a lot of these services that do all these services that charge for hosting your website, they layer in so many dark patterns to try to upsell more things. So
Yeah.
you want to add a chat widget, then you're paying another $10. You want to get analytics, you're paying another $10. The next thing you know it, you're at like $50 a month for a site that's getting like 10 visitors a month.
Right.
So we're planning to introduce a business model, of course. It's not always going to be the product itself will be free, but we're going to monetize in a very different way. Yeah, so I have a simple so weirdly I've been I'm sure everybody says this, but dabbling I've been in the AI category for a long time. So
Okay.
actually I was the first .ai domain on the internet with my company Tempo over 10 years ago. Uh,
Okay.
um, uh, Anyways, the reason I point that out is it's been very consistent in my experience working with AI. And what I mean by that is when I was doing computer vision stuff in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing NLP, semantic analysis in 2012, when I was doing meeting summarization in 2019, um, I use this litmus test, which I basically say is 95% good enough. And the point of that comment is AI has repeatedly, in my opinion, and I'm using AI as this large umbrella term because it means so many different things. Um, you know, it repeatedly it's great, but it's not perfect, right? And so you have to keep that in mind when you're thinking about mission critical workflows, and thinking about the design, like how are you going to present something that's not always perfect?
Yeah.
And a good example of this is I had a calendar company, Tempo AI, which is like this first .ai domain. Um, and uh, we were going to introduce a feature before we got acquired by Salesforce to allow you to schedule meetings, similar to Calendly. At
Yeah.
the time, there was multiple other startups that had AI assistants to schedule for you. You'd CC this AI assistant on an email or whatnot. And interestingly, X years later, Calendly is the winner, which is like the most manual flow. And the reason is the 1-2% of the time it gets things wrong is really, really consequential. And so when you're dealing with mission critical workflows, if it gets it wrong even 1% of the time, then I need a human in the loop. And now it kind of reevaluate, like re-questions the entire ROI.
Sure.
Fast forward to thinking about Solo. What's really neat about Solo is there's a lot of friction in choosing images, in writing the text for your website, but you don't need to be perfect. Like 95% is great, and it's saving me a
Mhm.
ton of time. And in some ways, it's even better than perfect because it forces the author of the site or the owner of the business to go and review the content and edit it in their own voice because we really want an authentic result. We don't necessarily want to just deliver something that's super vanilla and looks the same. So
Okay.
uh, I think that's really neat, and we do see that most people who do publish sites do edit their sites first after sort of it's generated, and then they publish. Yeah, so I mean, as mentioned earlier, it's an AI website creator. It's focused on service providers. You basically can start with an existing business site, which is a very common use case. You may have a Thumbtack page, Facebook business page, Instagram, Yelp page, whatnot. We will attempt to scrape it and pull in what's relevant.
Mhm.
And then you can answer a couple simple questions, and then we generate a site. And then you can go and edit it as you would edit your Wix or Squarespace through a much simpler UI with a lot fewer editing options. And then you can quickly publish it, connect a custom domain, connect Google Analytics if you like, and you're off to the races, And then we obviously publish it into our sitemap, so it gets indexed by Google. And so now you have a business up and running, your website, all probably within less than 15 minutes. So we don't, so the design part of Solo, so the way we approached that was initially, we did some testing around should we try to use Gen AI to suggest the fonts or suggest the color palettes.
Okay.
And what we found were the results were like the average of the internet.
Okay.
And so if you wanted, Calibri or Arial, if you wanted shades of blue or shades of gray,
Mhm.
these are just like the most popular colors on the internet. And so they would
Yeah.
just keep showing up. And so we realized that this wasn't great and it wasn't creating a unique enough experience. And so
Mhm.
we actually curated the fonts from within Solo. We do randomize from that list when we initially create your site. You can, of course, change that.
Mhm.
And then we defined a series of color palettes, dozens actually, from which you can choose from, which we also randomize. We don't let you further edit, like no further fidelity. And the reason for that is we feel that more design choices actually leads to more churn. People want to try every color and then they're not satisfied with it and then they never finish their site. And so less is more in many ways. So uh, ultimate full circle here to answer your question, we're not using AI uh,
Okay.
uh, to suggest the colors or fonts. We tried it early on, but we didn't think it was a unique enough result. Of course, that could change in the future, but that's kind of where Solo is right now. The most consistent kind of feedback we get is
Mhm.
usually they want more control, and so then it's always a question of like, should we allow that sort of editing or not? Or two, they want to add something that we don't yet support. We're relatively new product out of Mozilla. It's a very small team. It's like 4 people, and so we are building, and we're slowly kind of filling in those gaps.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a lot of unique things depending on occupation. If you go across I was looking at dog walker websites. Many
Mhm.
of those websites, for example, tend to have really, really long forms where you answer questions like, what kind of dog is it? What's the breed? What's its temperament, etc. If you go to attorney websites, they may have um, uh, articles or links to blog posts, things like that, right? So you have like different sorts of preferred information that's shown or requested depending on the occupational like vertical. And there's hundreds of occupations, right? So part of our goal here is as we dig into each of these sort of occupations, looking at like what the uh, best sort of experience is, and then trying to fill that gap, and then trying to make sure the way we fill it is in a way that it can be beneficial to all of our users. So interestingly, we position Solo as sort of it's no code, don't need to be technical, you can get up and running,
Mhm.
but it's amazing, and we've learned this sort of one of the things that we've learned in building Solo
Mhm.
is how many uh, solo business owners, whatnot, still go and get their tech buddy, go call the web agency, find a web developer to help them build this. And they spend a lot of money and time and stress, and it doesn't necessarily, and I think a lot of that is just because there's this fear that things are too complicated. Wix and Squarespace are beautiful experiences, but they have so many options. So you open you create your first site, and then you're just going to be inundated with choices,
Yeah.
and it can get scary very, very quickly. So, um, uh, I guess my point here is, yes, we do have mostly non-technical folks who use Solo, but interestingly, and almost maybe not to our surprise, but we have tons of technical people who use Solo too, right? Because we
Okay.
have web agencies, web developers who manage sites for clients, who manage sites for their friends, and they realize, hey, I can just use Solo and get this up and running a lot faster
Mhm.
than going and building something from scratch. Yeah, so there's the support section off the Solo website, which I continue to update as I see various sorts of questions that come through. I am the support person, so when people do send emails, I do reply to all of
Mhm.
them. But the neat thing about that is I'm able to see patterns on the types of questions that are being asked, and then I can add
Mhm.
support questions to try to broadly address those issues. We have some automated emails that are sent when you sign up. There's only a couple. They do provide some tips and links out to support.
Mhm.
And then Mozilla itself has actually launched a Discord community, not specifically for solo, but targeted at solopreneurs in general.
Mhm.
If they want to share best practices, tips and tricks around tools, things like that, which is something uh, uh, you can also sort of use to ask questions in and around solo because there are team members there that are supporting that. So I don't see the website going away.
Of course.
I do think the internet is changing for sure.
Mhm.
There's a lot more synthetic content. The way people are consuming information, they're looking for answers. However, when it comes to things like recommendations,
Mhm.
whether it's restaurants, services, people are still running those searches in blue link metaphor, Google like sort of model. And the reason is um, uh, suggested results out of your answer engine. Uh, it's only so good, right? There's a reason Reddit has grown in traffic so much in the past uh, months because people want to see authentic commentary around a product. They want to see reviews, whatnot, right? So I don't see websites for this entire segment going away for a
Mhm.
long time. And part of the reason is it is effectively their digital business card. It's their landing page. So to me, uh, that's there to stay. So then the question of generative AI, I think generative AI is like fuel on the fire. It's an accelerant. It's making everybody more productive. And
Yeah.
so I think as long as business owners can now focus on their business more, if you're like an on-demand barber or hairstylist and you come to people's homes to cut their hair, you don't want to be spending hours trying to figure out your website. You want to kind of get that going. You'll share people your URL or whatnot, but you want to focus on your business. And so I think this is an accelerant. I think it's an advantage for those that do take advantage of these tools. I think it's a disadvantage for those that don't take advantage of these tools.
Mhm.
But my general feeling is it's helping everybody. And I don't see sort of websites in this segment going away. I've played with a number of these AI tools that are doing like app generation or design generation. I think Framer is one of them, like screenshots, whatnot. I don't see, I'm not in the camp that it's going to replace design. I think it's great for creative ideation.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when I think about design in Figma, I do want to look at reference examples. So I do go to these sites like patterns and whatnot that they basically screenshot like hundreds of apps. So I can see other onboarding flows, I can see other settings flows, I can see other, feed flows, whatnot, and it gives me ideas. Um, and certainly when it comes to sort of wireframing, yes, I think if I'm comfortable just sort of copying a particular layout or design, I think AI will be
Mhm.
great. Um, but when it comes to ultimately applying visual design, AI is really generating an average of the internet. And so you really you want something authentic to the brand that you want to create. And so I really think you're going to need visual designers on your team. Even when it comes to wireframing, AI is helping you create the first pass, but now you got to work with it and massage it, and you got to think about different permutations and whatnot. And so, yes, I do think, again, I think it's a massive accelerant, but I don't see it as replacing designers anytime soon, and I don't even think that should be the objective. Like, I think that's like this is, if anything, I think it's a superpower for designers, because they can ideate or go through options faster. And I think this comes back to a different philosophical question. If you subscribe to the 95% thesis, then the humans are never out of the loop. Yeah, so we're like any consumer company or SaaS company, we have a whole growth plan playbook that's some combination of things from improving our domain authority to drive more organic traffic from Google to, cold email outreach to existing business owners to building community, PR, you name it, creating some product-led growth by allowing multiple editors on your website, things like that. So there's a range of different things that we have planned to help to sort of layer in the infrastructure to drive growth, hopefully over the coming year. Yeah, so I think you know, step one
Mm-hmm.
was build something useful.
Okay.
We're seeing that and it's growing. Step two is now to drive massive growth. And then step three will be to monetize. And the way we're planning to monetize is allow business owners to actually buy ads against Firefox. So when you search in Firefox, like plumbers in San Jose, your business could be served as a sponsored result. And what's really nice about this is it kind of goes back to what is the job to be done with the website? Like, what is the overall objective? And the objective is to drive more business, ultimately. And so, what's neat about this approach and this model is we're kind of charging for what you want. You want to drive more business? That's where we can help. You don't have to pay for simply hosting your website. So,
Okay.
that's going to be on the horizon. The most, I'm just thinking through the most common things that I hear. So, the most common thing I hear is it's not the right time.
Okay.
And I always come back and say it's always the right time because you can't plan these things. You just have to like start going. The second thing is um, I can't figure out my idea. That's the second most common thing I hear. And I usually tell people find a space that you like and then just go
Mm-hmm.
copy something. And just swimming in that direction, you'll land somewhere. As long as you kind of have some good product instinct,
Okay.
and you kind of iterate along the way. So just find something, an area you like. Sometimes even go look in an app store category and just say, I like this area. I'm just going to copy this. I'm just start building in this way. And it will take you somewhere. Because almost always where you start is not what it's going to look like at the end. Um, I'm sure I have dozens of other tips, but if it's more specific questions, but uh, um, those are probably some of the more common things that come up when I see people not starting. Um, I think the general notion is everyone becomes more specialized and everyone becomes a super IC is like kind of the term I've been hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So like a super individual contributor. So, um, you know, does AI help the family doctor? Absolutely. Does it replace the family doc? No, but now he or she can focus on higher leverage tasks, right? And
Okay.
so I think that's the way to look at things. How can I automate or replace my lower leverage tasks with higher leverage tasks? And
Mm-hmm.
AI is great at doing that. Um, does the definition of higher leverage change over time as AI continues to improve? Maybe, but there's always something to work on. Like the work doesn't go away, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't end. And I think it's important to be adaptable
Okay.
and to stay curious because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to constantly be learning. It's going to be difficult if you start stagnating. But
Okay.
no, I'm not in that camp that I see AI replacing us in any shape or form anytime soon. I mean, you're seeing automation all over the place.
Okay.
Um, And, whether it's like making your hamburger in an assembly line at McDonald's, whether it's driving the vehicle like a Waymo, but then still have remote drivers that are monitoring, right? Whether it's uh, uh, a warehouse, which is like moving boxes along an assembly line with robotics. So certainly there are multiple touch points where um, AI, I don't know if I like the word replace, but it's transitioning jobs. But I think people aren't going away.
Okay.
I think people are now doing other higher leverage work,
Okay.
um, and and uh, and I think ultimately productivity is just booming, right? Like productivity follows this exponential curve, and like we're 10xing every X years, which is amazing. So I think this would be another 10x, and all the downstream effects of that, which is just more output, more innovation, more science, all of it.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Raj. It's been a pleasure discussing solo AI and your work at Mozilla. We're eager to see how your platform continues to innovate and shape the industry for solopreneurs.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.